carbohydrates can store as fat, but fats can also store as fat. Now, I generally sit in the low carb camp, meaning that's generally the side that I personally lean towards. I feel good with it. I lost 100 pounds that direction. Doesn't mean that I preach it as the only way. We do have to occasionally take a step back and look at how fat is actually stored. And what I want to be able to explain here is that fat, when you overconsume, overconsume fat, you actually store that as fat easier in the moment than if you overconsume carbohydrates in the moment. Now, full disclaimer, because I know I'm going to get backlash on that part. Overeating carbohydrates over the longer term might be worse long term because you set yourself up to potentially be insulin resistant, and that could be metabolically damaging as you go further down the line. But I'm talking about in the literal moment. And when people do a low carb diet and they eat a ton of fats and they overdo their calories with the fats, those fats will probably store easier as body fat than slightly going overboard on carbohydrates. Okay, now, not necessarily talking about ketosis per se. I'm talking about just if you were looking them at simple macronutrients. So let's explain what happens here. When you eat some fat, your body has a pretty simple process to break it down. Okay, you have pancreatic lipase that comes in and that breaks down the fat enzymatically so that it can turn into fatty acids. And guess what? Those fatty acids are now liberated. It's that simple. You can either use them or you store them, okay? And if you're using those fats, great. But if you're storing them, they're already a fat, okay? They don't have a lot of breakdown to occur to ultimately turn them into a triglyceride. There's not a lot of breakdown that has to occur, rather. So for a fat that you overconsumed, it's just a simple process to break it down into its storage form in your body. So it's literally easy for your body to say, we're in a surplus, that is fat, store that as fat. Simple. Fat can still make you fat, despite what people will say, okay? You are not absolved of your duties to still keep track of thermodynamics to some degree. You are not absolved of your duties to make sure that you don't overeat. And I'm not saying it's better to overeat carbs, but I'm trying to paint a picture here. Here's what happens if you overeat carbohydrates. Okay. A myriad of things, potential insulin resistance, de novo lipogenesis, but let's talk about what has to happen for your body to turn carbohydrates into fat. Okay, first, your body has to break down that carbohydrate into a monosaccharide. Then it has to take that monosaccharide, glucose, and it goes through glycolysis. As a result, it creates something called pyruvate. Okay, pyruvate then turns into something called acetyl coenzyme A. Okay, that acetyl coenzyme A then gets acted upon by acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase, which then combines and turns into malonyl coenzyme A, which then combines with acetyl coenzyme A again, as well as NADPH or 1,4-NADPH. Okay, you can see where I'm going with this, right? I'm going to back up or I'm going to pause for just a second. That whole part was just gobbledygook to you probably. Okay, the point is there's a lot of processes there. Okay, but then it has to react with what is called fatty acid synthase, just like the name implies, synthase. Fatty acid synthase will take those molecules and create carbon chains to ultimately, over 7 successive steps after this, literally 7 more steps, gets turned into a palmitic acid, a 16 carbon chain palmitic acid saturated fat. That is complicated, okay? The body doesn't like inefficiency. The body's going to opt to store, from a survival mechanism, whatever is more opportune, okay? Let me pause for a second to explain how your snacking may want to look, okay? If you are eating a bunch of carbohydrates already, then you're someone that may want to back off the carbohydrates and have a higher fat, higher protein snack. If you are someone that is eating a lot of fat, like maybe you're doing keto or low carb, you probably don't want to add additional high fat snacks. You might be someone that is better off having a lean protein snack, or possibly if you're not keto and you're not worried about a couple carbs, a leaner, lighter carbohydrate snack. Okay, you have to look at where you are in total for the day. If you're already consuming 500 grams of carbohydrates, then maybe a carbohydrate-rich snack is going to push you over the edge. If you're already consuming 200 grams of fat, then maybe you need to consider that a 10-gram fat or a 20-gram fat snack is not the best option. I did put a link if you're looking for snacks, you're looking for things. Huge advocate for Thrive Market. Okay, they are a sponsor of this channel, but they've got Thomas DeLauer's stamp of approval for the last almost half a decade. So shopping, grocery shopping, stocking your fridge, they've done the legwork for you. I definitely recommend it. It is seriously one of the biggest game changers that has come into my life. Like, I can't even tell you how awesome it is to be able to go online, pick the foods that I want, and not have to deal with people at the grocery store. You may not know it by looking at me, but I'm an introvert. I don't like going and being around a large group of people in the grocery store. I don't like that. That's just not who I am, even though I do grocery hauls. But being able to like shop, select, see what I want, see the macronutrients, see what fits within a different diet category, high carb, low carb, keto, vegan, whatever, and then have it just delivered to my doorstep in a couple days. Then it's like Christmas. Like then, oh cool, my Thrive box is here. So there's a link for you to save 25% off your groceries, and then it's delivered right to your doorstep, plus you get a free gift. So use that link down below in the description to try them out. Seriously, it's going to be a game changer for you making tweaks to your diet. So when you look at a low carb protocol, most of the time, people want to have like a fat bomb snack, or they want to have something that's high fat. But if you have already consumed, let's say 2,000 calories and your daily budget is 2,000 calories, you may not know exactly what it is, what is that extra fat going to do? Is it going to magically get converted into ketones? Is it magically going to get converted into energy and just give you abundant energy? No, the body still has survival and storage at the front of its mind, and it has efficiency at the front of its mind. Okay, so let's take two situations. You're low carb and you overeat on the fats. You store those fats because it's extra calories, and you absolutely can still store fat without the presence of insulin. Okay, let's take scenario 2. You're low carb, okay, but you decide to have a carbohydrate, or you have 20 grams of carbohydrates. I'm not suggesting that this is good, okay, be forewarned. I'm not suggesting that you should, but what's going to happen is you'll knock yourself out of ketosis, and you might feel cruddy, you might feel sluggish, but the likelihood of you literally storing it as fat is much lower because A, there's less caloric density, but B, you're just not going to probably store that as fat. And again, I don't think you should do it. It will knock you out of ketosis, and you'll be back to square one, and you'll have to work hard to get in there. But that's kind of where it says, okay, maybe you're better off having protein. So when you are feeling like you've already gotten to your like caloric needs for the day, and you just feel like for some reason I'm still hungry, but I know that if I eat, I'm going to be in a surplus, opt for protein, because the protein is going to be an inefficiency, because it's hard to convert protein into fat. It's hard to convert protein into energy. So your body has to work harder for the protein. It's less overall risk, right? Still, a surplus is a surplus. You're still having a problem, but it's like in order of the damage, protein's the least damage, carbohydrates least damage in terms of immediate fat gain, and fat's the most damage in terms of immediate fat gain. So you still have to really watch that line. Longer term, I think the carbohydrates start to tilt, and if you were to consistently, like every day, eat carbohydrates as your keto snack, well, yeah, that's definitely going to cause a problem, right? Bottom line is, fats still store its fat. Be careful. If you're having a hard time losing weight and you're doing low carb, you're eating high fat, number one, the first thing I tell people to do, drop the fats. Drop the fats down 10%, 20%, and watch what happens. I would say a 95% success rate with people when they are stuck, and I tell them to do that, okay? That does not mean that you go indulge on carbohydrates. That was all just for painting a picture. I hope that this helps, and I'll see you tomorrow.